glad that you are reaching us here today. My name is Tatiana Kolovu, and this is the live version of Stronger, the newsletter that I produce on LinkedIn. This has been a tough summer. Some of you who know me know that our son has been ill, and in the beginning of the summer, I started thinking about talking to ourselves and talking about challenging situations. That led to several LinkedIn Learning newsletters and opportunities to really dig in a little deeper of how do we talk about adversity when someone says, how are you, or what happened, or how was your summer in my case. So today in our LinkedIn Live, I thought I would invite one of my very dear friends, colleagues, and who I call the Chief Inspiration Officer, Mr. Tom Morris. Now, Tom Morris is the Senior Assistant Athletic Director of Athletic Performance at Indiana University. As you can see from the big IU on his shirt, he works at IU. And if you hear any thumping music, he is in the actual weight room where he works on a daily basis, helping athletes become stronger, faster, and a little smarter as they process. Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm extremely excited, and I will do my best to keep that thumping down to a minimum here.
Absolutely, Tom. I'm going to put in your LinkedIn handle here if people want to focus or if they want to follow you. So let's get right to it. You and I had talk about resilience. We go on rides and side by side on our bikes talk about what you can talk about in your inspirational keynotes that you do, how we write. You're writing a book and you're working on a lot of your stories. And it's an opportunity for me to talk resilience for you. I always enjoy it. And first, if I don't say it enough, thank you so much for coming on this live. But for our audience, we're both in Bloomington, Indiana. I told you Tom is in his shop, his weight room where he trains athletes. But Tom, tell us a little bit about what happened that got you into the business of talking about dealing with adversity.
Yeah, so adversity comes in all these different shapes and sizes. It's part of our daily life, and throughout my life, I have had a lot of adversity. But the biggest bout of adversity I suffered was about 9 years ago, and I went out on this morning, gorgeous morning. And I went out for a mountain bike ride, and about a quarter mile before I ended that ride, I went around this sharp corner and I smashed a rock. 3.5 hours later, I was being life flighted to a hospital where I suffered and was diagnosed with a C6, C7 spinal cord injury. And that's very simply put, I broke my neck. That injury left me paralyzed from the chest down with all four limbs either impaired or not working at all, and on that journey, I didn't know it at the time when I was being life flighted, but the next 2 years of my life were going to be the most intensive lessons in resilience that I'd ever face.
I want to pause here. And for the people watching you speak, you say, I had a severed neck, a vertebrae. If I'm not mistaken, there were times where they told your wife, Krista, he's going to be a quadriplegic. And here you are gesturing some of the things we talk about when I coach you to speak and you don't use your hands and we say you do. But this is part of the miracle that is you. With your willpower and your incredible work ethic, you have been able to overcome so much of the adversity that was brought to you. Tell us a little more so we understand. You get lifelined, you're in the hospital. How long did it take from those first few days of diagnosis of your big life event to being able to do what you do now? How did that process?
Yeah, so just picture on that morning 9 years ago, I went from living this life of complete freedom. I physically was able to move, do anything that I wanted to. And then within an instant, I'm laying in a hospital bed with the very limited mobility as far as what I'm able to do as far as pinching my fingers or moving my body at all. Every day for the next year of living in a hospital, living in a rehabilitation hospital, just working on the finest of little motor skills. So, pinching your fingers, trying to, comb my hair, trying to do these things to just gain my life back. And, the biggest thing that I realized throughout this journey was it wasn't about, everybody associates paralysis with just the inability to walk. But the reality for me was I had lost all independence. And that independence, when that is stripped away, that's one of the toughest things that you could ever have happen. Because at that point, I realized that I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't physically grab the fork to bring the food to my mouth. I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't do the things, going to the bathroom, the things that we just take for granted day to day. And that weight, that challenge was so incredibly heavy. Now, it took me a good year of stories upon stories, trials and failures. But in a year's time, I was able to gain back that ability to be independent, to be able to live life, but just live it a little bit differently. I was able to come back and get to work, be able to come back and do this job of working in this 25,000 square foot weight room with the most elite athletes on the planet, just doing it a little bit differently. And you know what? And the biggest one of all, which took maybe a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I gained back sport, and I gained back sport, the thing that took all of this away. I was able to gain this back and work my butt off to get back in there and still compete again.
Well, that's the amazing part. And I think when we talk about resilience in the workplace, we have adversity. You lose a client, you lose your job at times. We know so many people that have lost their jobs during COVID, and it's such an uproar and a stressful event. This is hopefully not going to happen to any one of our listeners and one of our learners. But what I love that you bring to the discussion is the fact that you come back and you try things, you fail, you try again, you keep getting back up. It's the constant reminder of resilience, which is getting yourself back on your feet. And you have a great story about coming back to work that I want to bring back a little later. But you and I have talked about the mindset. If I'm not mistaken, when you were in grad school, right, you wrote an essay where they had asked you to spend a day in a wheelchair. This is pretty scary that this happened, 5-6 years before the accident. And you had concluded, you showed me that essay, that a head strength and conditioning coach could not do her or his work if they are not able to move about, right?
Exactly. And that story, it was amazing because when this accident happened, and just to frame this out a little bit, I don't just have a job. This is my passion. I love training athletes. I mean, this is a thing that I never felt like I never had a job in my life, because this is just something I truly love. And so when this happens, my mind went right back to that essay that I wrote. And just to give a little bit more backlog, I remember still getting that wheelchair in grad school, going into the weight room and trying to do this job as best of my ability. And I spent hours. I mean, I had a 12-hour shift that day, and I spent a good 7-8 hours of just trying to make this happen. And then I concluded, this can't be done. This is not the profession that we're going to be able to, that a person in a chair would be able to do. And so I left there, wrote that essay, and I really just kind of sat there going, man, this would be really, really tough. For me too, being in a wheelchair, it's almost like my biggest nightmare come true. I not only, wrote that paper on it, I would not walk through handicapped parking spots because someone in my younger life told me that if it's superstition wise, if you walk through a handicapped parking spot, you could put yourself at risk to have something like this happen. And I remember doing that and taking it so serious. So when all of this happened, it was just such a heavy reality of, wow, this is really, really rocked my world.
And coming to terms with something so difficult when it does happen, in the newsletter, when I wrote about the language of resilience, what we tell ourselves, what we tell others, what we tell our teams, and how do we ask for help when we need to, can you tell me a little bit about 9 years later now, how do you, when someone says, Tom, what happened? Or is that different when someone asks you to describe an event maybe a year later? How did you talk about your adversity? And then we'll talk a little bit about talking about adversity in general.
Yeah. So for me, adversity, when I get to speak about it now, I'm so excited. And I hope I could relay that through this broadcast, because it's strictly an ability to learn. I love the fact that adversity equals an opportunity. I love looking at friction and using it for this optimistic view on the only reason it's there is to make me better. And so when I get to tell my story, when I get to speak about this, I look at this as in one light, and that is it's an opportunity for us to grow. This entire accident, in the beginning, I sat there trying to figure out why. Why does this happen? How did this happen? How am I going to continue to keep moving on? But it was a mindset switch. It was this reframing of what happened, that the only way I could actually kind of deal with it was, hey, this is an ability that is going to teach you how to grow. It's going to teach you a lot of lessons. And you may not know it at this time. Maybe you can't make sense of it, but in the future you will. And here I am 9 years later, taking what happened, that injury, that friction, that challenge, that adversity, and trying to make the best of it, and hopefully helping others live their best lives, because I really do feel like I'm really, really living. I'm really pushing the boundaries, and I'm doing it, and I'm doing it just in a little different manner.
You're pretty fearless. I know that. Every time I see pictures of you skiing or water skiing and doing other things, I'm like, oh my gosh. And you drive fast even too, to this day. I put in your website because I'd love for people to go see it. If you are ever thinking of hiring someone to inspire and motivate your group, please reach out to Tom. He's incredible. He can do this virtually or in person as well. But as we talk about the whole reframe, I call you at times when I need reframing. I will pick up the phone, and we all need reframing people in our lives to say, we can't say it was tragic, it was challenging, it's tough, it's not awful. There's always a positive spin, or I would say an optimistic spin, that you bring, that you inspire me and you inspire people around you. I know the athletes in your weight room, they'll say, well, there's no way if I see him do what he does that I can skip a set or not work as hard, because you just bring that every day. But it's really how, not just you think about it, but how you communicate it. How do you talk about it, right?
It is 100%. And that's what it is for me, is I truly believe it. I believe with every kind of situation, with every bit of adversity, I just truly believe that there's a good in every situation. There's a way to take any given situation, and I could come out stronger from it. And I think that's so powerful. And I relay that to our athletes. The reality is we're in sport. In sport, there's winners and losers. There's a lot of things all the time. And that's the nature of it. But that's our lives. That's the world we live in, business to whatever it is. How we deal with that and how we choose to reframe it and see it, it's just such a powerful way of seeing things. There's a great thing that Jocko Willing, I don't know if you follow any Jocko stuff, but Navy SEAL lieutenant commander, and he said this. He had this viral video, but it was very simple. He said he'd have some subordinates come to him, and they would give him all these problems, like, Lieutenant, we don't have water coming in. Lieutenant, we don't have this. And every response, he'd just say, good. And then they'd say it again, and he'd say, good. And he'd say it again, and he'd say, good. And he said the only reason he kept saying that is because the reality is saying bad or getting worried about this or putting your mindset in a different place, it just doesn't do any good. But the positive aspect of it, it opens it up. I mean, research even shows that if you stay positive, it opens up so many more narratives that you could create. It gives you so many more options of how you're going to be able to relay yourself. And that's where I choose to be, is just stay in this world of digging down and looking for the good in it, and then relaying it and sharing it with people.
Sharing it with others. One of our learners says, how do you know or decide how much of that past experience you convert into new energy and inspiration? For you, it's 100%. I mean, it's your life, right?
It is. It's every inch. It's everything. I think that every bit of energy, everything that's ever happened to me, I try and take every experience and who I am and change it into the most positive way of living. I do everything at a max. And I think that's the best that we can always do is do that. And again, I know we talk, not jumping ahead, we do this as a team. And in this atmosphere, we have so many great people around us. I think it's our responsibility for ourselves to individually do stuff at that max level. But I also think it is the same for having that team around us to make them all better as well.
Yeah. I want to show this comment from a learner because thank you, Tom. You know, the glass being half full. Tom says it's not just half full, it's all the way full because you have to consider air and water. It's always full. And that's why you know that I call Tom when I need some glass perspective when things happen and when things go bad. So number one is talking about what happened when someone says to me, how was your summer for this summer? Or someone says to you, what happened? How do you talk about it to your team? Because I know so many stories where you talked about having to find your independence, and part of it is asking for help. You have some amazing stories of going back to work and thinking, oh crap, am I going to be able to perform the way that I did, and being stressed about it? Talk to me a little bit about how do you talk about adversity as you look to people around you that you need their help? How was it for you coming back to work and dealing with that?
Yeah, I mean, incredibly challenging. And so just to set the stage with this, you know, I'm coming back to a 25,000 square foot weight room.
Okay, say that again. Say that again.
25,000 square feet.
Exactly.
I mean, it's one of the largest weight rooms in the country. I mean, the energy is
nearly as big as a soccer field, right?
Yep. It's actually longer than a soccer field. So it's incredible. So it's loud, it's energetic, it's high energy. And I'm coming back to train the most elite athletes on the planet. And I'm going to teach them how to lift. I'm going to teach them how to jump. And I'm going to teach them how to run. And I know from this, you can't see, but I'm sitting in a wheelchair. So I'm not exactly the most ideal person for this job. So you can only imagine the anxiousness of, how am I going to do this? How am I going to come back to work? And what am I going to do? And
I take a deep breath.
I mean, it's kind of overwhelming, but to your point, I have a great team around me, from you to the colleagues I work with. I mean, we're tight, and people, we lean on each other. But when
I have to, she's not, I don't see her in the comments. The number one team captain of your team is Krista, your wife, that is unbelievable in her support and is the first one to put you back in your place too when you're being ridiculous. I know that.
Within a split second. I mean, she would probably have a couple of comments to say if she was able to watch this today.
Let's hide what we're doing.
That's right. That's right.
Tell the story when you get back and it's the first day. You set out your clothes the night before. You're so anxious. You get ready to come in. How are you going to show up after so much adversity? What's the pressure of how you talk about it and how you talk to your teams about it?
Yeah, so I'm coming in. So so I'm set. I have the stage is set, the new polo's on, and I'm ready. I'm gonna come into work, and I'm gonna make this happen. And you know, I come into work. I'm a bit anxious, but I have a plan, and the plan is I'm gonna speak to them the same way as I was before. You know, I'm not gonna bring attention to the chair. What I want to do is I want to talk to them in a way that I'm going to get the final product out of them. And then I'm going to adapt as we need to go. And so we use technology and we use a lot of different things. But here's a story, though, that I think you know this one, Tom.
I love it. I love it. That's why I want you to say it again.
So it's day one. Here I am, anxious. I'm in the weight room. I get to the weight room, and I'm only here for a brief 1,000. And I remember, forgot something out in my car. So I make my way out, and I'm on my way out to my car, and I hit this little lip. I'm talking like this, but with this wheelchair, when you hit that,
it's like
all
this.
Of a sudden, you're flying through the air. So all of a sudden, I'm flying through the air. This anxious guy, scared of what people are thinking of him, and I go splat in the ground, and I'm laying on the ground. The chair goes flying. So I quickly scamper, and I'm trying to get to the chair, and I reach back, and I grab the chair and I pull it in. And just when I'm about to try and get up into that chair, I hear these voices in the background. And who is it? But it's the entire baseball team. And I mean, you got to remember, I'm scared. I don't want them to even see me in a chair. Now I'm not even the guy in the chair. I'm the guy laying on the ground in front of the stadium, out of the chair. And so they yell, "Hey, can we help you?" And at that point, there was an embarrassment. But then there's also this part of me that to be vulnerable enough to just say, yeah, I could use some help on this. So two guys come walking over, and they said, "What can we do?" And I said, "If you can, just reach down, pick me up, and throw me into the chair.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did. They just put me into the chair, and I sat there at that point, though, kind of mortified. You know, I built up this confidence. I sat at home. I did these things, mental imagery. I talked to myself. I had this stuff going, and then I get here, and then I'm laying on the ground. And so the two kids go inside, and I sat there either making the choice of going out to my car and going home, or I could turn around and go back into the facility. And
day one, right? Day one back at the office.
This isn't even day. This is day one and only the first like half hour of being there. And so I'm hit with this, and then I'm hit with this choice to make. And the only thing I can remember is that morning waking up and just saying, "You can do this. This is it." And I had my wife who spoke about. She said, "You're darn right. You could do this." And I turned and went back inside, and I trained those athletes, and I trained them in a way where I spoke the same. I reacted the same. We just had to do a couple things a little bit different, but they just responded. They responded in a way the same as before. It's just they heard my voice, they heard my passion, and I was able to train them and get the most out of them the same way as we did before.
And Tom, when you were on the ground and they said, "What can we do?" and you said, "You can just put me back on the chair," you were vulnerable enough to ask for help. And I think the language of how do you talk to your team about when something is going wrong, it's us letting go of our egos and saying, "I need help. I need support. Here is what I need. Here's exactly what I need," without expecting expecting that you have to pay it back or maybe pay it forward. But a lot of the way we talk to the people around us comes from our resistance to asking for help. And you have amazing stories for that. And I know you don't have a problem reaching out and asking for help, right?
It's so true. And I mean, that's the reality now, is that to put the ego aside, to put that down and be vulnerable enough to just say, "Hey, I don't know if this is in me right now, but I need that help. I need to be pulled along." You know, what I found is that it not only made me better, but when you ask someone for help, you empower them. It makes the big picture, especially when we're talking about a team of people around. When you get to lean on people and you're vulnerable in a state, they help you, and then you get to, you know, in a sense, pay it back when it's your turn, when they're down. Man, it's just an incredible feeling that makes the entire big picture of it thrive.
Yeah, it builds trust and adversity. There's even some research in the latest journal I wrote about that in one of my newsletters that shows that when a team gets over something together, there's more trust that's built, and resilience can make them stronger if they handle it in that way. Tom, because we try to keep these short so that we don't bump into everyone's work too much, but we talk about our events that are stressful and adverse. We talk to our team, but I wanted to leave this for last. We talk to ourselves. Every day when we wake up, we have choices that we need to make. Every day we face adversity, we have choices that we need to make. And you and I talk a lot about the sports parallel. This is like entering a race or entering a court or entering the arena to be under a lot of pressure. How do you talk to yourself when you are like that? And you use your one word, and I want to have you talk about that first, and then I have a story I want you to tell too.
Definitely. Well, that one word is can. I just think can, C-A-N. It's the most powerful word you could ever say. That word for me is the thing that ignites me. It's the thing that I wake up every morning and I say, I can do this. Because for me, it's almost that mindset switch. It allows me to, no matter how bad the night's sleep was, no matter how much of a challenge that morning might be, allows me to start and, so to speak, put that one foot in front of the other and get the ball rolling for the day.
And you've had lots of opportunities, not just waking up and saying, I can, and that's the attitude I will choose today, but coaching yourself through tough moments. I mean, there's the story of you laying on the ground, realizing that you don't have feeling in your hands to reach for your phone. But one of my best stories is you saying, I'm independent, Krista, I don't want you to come to the rehab place to help me. I'm going to take a shower on my own. And then what happened?
Well, That's a heck of a story.
A condensed version of that.
Condensed, but it's true. That night it was this, I wanted to go to the bathroom and I wanted to shower. Again, all these things that we just take for granted. And boy, I was really built up for this one. But I'm going to sum it up real quick. I went to make a move onto the shower bench and found myself flat on the ground again. And now this is only, it's weeks after this. So I could barely even hold my arm up, let alone transfer and be able to lift myself. But for the next 2.5 hours, I crawled out into the bedroom. I went up into a chair. I went down. I went back and forth. I tried and then I failed. I tried and then I failed. 2.5 hours. I eventually ended back in that wheelchair, to neutral. And I wheeled into the bathroom. And when I wheeled into the bathroom, I looked at the shower and thought to myself, are you going to do it? Like, maybe you had too much. And I remember just talking to myself, I can do this. I have all this support that was pushing me. And I said, I'm going to do it. And I transferred onto that shower bench and I reached forward. And when I reached forward, I turned that knob and the first drop of water that hit me, and then the second drop and the third drop. And all of a sudden I'm taking a shower, and it wasn't just a
all
shower,
by yourself,
all by myself. And it wasn't just a shower, because it was just my independence coming back one drop at a time. And that feeling of failing and laying on the ground and then looking, and I had my phone there. I just thought, you know what, I could call somebody, or I could just use this adversity and let it create an opportunity. And that opportunity was my independence. And that was what ignited me to say, if I could do this, man, I could drive again, and I could get my life back. But you just have to keep fighting, and you got to keep going through this, and you got to get that self-talk and that positivity and optimism, and just know that if you keep going and never ever quit, you could accomplish anything.
I can't stop asking you to say this again and again, because it's so inspirational. I know that a lot of people, and I've heard this in your talks, they ask you, do you ever have a bad day? Are there moments that are tough? Do you ever say, I'm sick of this, or this is a tough situation, or this is going on at work? How do you manage that? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, and the answer is yes. There's no doubt I have many bad days, like we all do. But for myself, it's I try to reframe everything in a way of having gratitude for what I have. You know, I look at what I have in my life. We'll call it the blessings. We'll call it whatever. All the good things I have in my life, I try to shift my focus onto that. And a lot of times it bounces me out. But if I'm not able to shift my mind from that, one of the biggest things that I found that really, really helps me is just getting out and helping someone else, calling someone up and just seeing how they're doing, paying it forward, being able to be around someone and actually help them allows every single time, 100% of the time, I have been able to bounce myself out of a funk just by being able to try and help somebody and have a conversation. I don't even know what I said most of the time, but it's just when you're able to be around people and help them, it's just so empowering, and it's just so good for the entire culture that surrounds it. And it always picks me up.
You know, when our son Alexei was sick earlier this summer, we came to visit you because I knew that you would say something that would give him inspiration or give him an idea. And I remember him asking you, Tom, would you do anything differently in how you managed your recovery? And you said to him, I didn't document it enough. I didn't remember how bad it was, so I can look back now and see how good it is now, right?
It's so true. It's so true. That's our life. That's it. That's why I think documenting, I think making videos of yourself, I think talking the way you do is just so important, because you get actual content of where you're at, and then where you're going to grow to, where you're going to get better. And I think that's what life is all about.
Yeah.
You document to see it yourself grow. You see yourself continue to keep evolving and getting better. And I really miss that. I think in the situation that I was in, it was just everything was going so fast. My wife and I, that we didn't have that. And so what I would say to any of the viewers of this is, no matter how dark the time is, you just don't document that. Shoot a video. Be vulnerable to say, today really stinks. And I am, because that video you'll look back on someday and you'll say, God, I'm just so happy that, because you're going to build yourself up and continue to keep going. But it is a regret that I have.
And if it helps at all, at least Alexi went back and wrote about he's documented, he's actually done sketches of what it was like to ride in the ambulance and some of that, because it comes back to, even we are in the eye of the storm and we are trying to pull ourselves back and out and be resilient and bounce back. Part of it is being in that moment, realizing where we are right here, right now, instead of trying to run away from it. And that realization and sort of managing is what makes us stronger. That's what builds our endurance to resilience, is being able to withstand that pressure. And I think you're a great example of that. People are writing on the notes saying, thank you for sharing that and for sharing that story. Tom, is there anything that you share that helps others a lot in your speaking engagements that you think that may help when it comes to resilience? Anything that you've learned beyond what we've talked about in speaking the language of resilience?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've had a lot of really good feedback on is individuals when they're going through some really tough, dark times, just being okay with it. I mean, life is about adversity, friction, and all the things that happen in our life. It's meant to be. It's a thing that everybody's going to experience. So when you're going through them, being able to take that step back and almost reframe it and sit there and look for the positive parts of it, and not to struggle with, like, take your time when you're doing that. I think just by being able to step back from a situation and putting stuff on pause and just holding up before you react, it gives such an empowering energy to be able to move forward. And I found that so many times in my life when I've hit some major struggles and I start getting wound up in this world of negativity and not knowing how to react, and when I just paused and tried to sit there and go, let me just look at this a little bit deeper and figure out what's going on. It allows us to take that adversity and turn it into something that ends up being positive, and allows us to be a better version of ourselves. And it was a thing we never really wanted. And then we start learning that, and then we start embracing it. And that is an extremely powerful thing, because when you can look at adversity or friction or anything in your life and then start wanting it and welcoming it because you know it's only going to make you better, it's a recipe for success.
So true. It's discomfort creates opportunity and growth, right? You and I talk about that all the time. And I know that when I started working with you, where I would say, do it again with your speaking engagements. You're like, I hate this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to write my outline. Don't make me speak. And I would say, discomfort creates growth and opportunity. You have to live it, Tom, right?
It's so true. And I mean, half of those stories happened at like 11 o'clock at night, and all I wanted to do was go to bed.
I know.
I have to do it again and again. But it is so true. It's that, it's the world of athletics. It's friction, all the lifting, all the conditioning. It's to put a better product out there. It's to make us grow. And that's what we got. And that's what resilience is for me, is, every time I get to talk to companies and all, different people in all different walks of life, it's the same recipe. Resilience is this essential muscle that you need to build up and you need to keep working on, because what it does is it just makes you invincible, because no matter what life throws at you, you're going to bounce back. You become fearless, and you become able to live this incredible life that you'll be able to maximize forever.
It's our time to say goodbye, but everyone knows why the Language of Resilience newsletter ended up in this amazing guest discussion with Tom. Tom doesn't line up at the water fountain. He drinks from the fire hose, and now you know why. So we want to say a big thank you and farewell to you, Tom, and hopefully we will do this again sometime soon. And to all of you who joined us here today, if you would like to learn more, follow the Stronger newsletter that comes out on LinkedIn, and this broadcast would be available. Thank you so much. Keep pushing your resilience threshold, keep getting stronger, and keep welcoming positive people like Tom in your life. Thank you.